Okay, we are in chapter 13. What happened last time? They made bow and arrows. That's right. So, chapter 13. Wherever he went now, Matt watched for Indian signs. Sometimes he could not be sure whether a branch had been broken in the wind or whether an animal had scratched a queer-shaped mark on a tree trunk. Once or twice he was certain he had discovered the sign of the beaver. It was a game he played with himself. That it was not a game to Etienne, he was still to learn. They were following a narrow trail one morning, this time to the east, when Etienne halted abruptly. "Hist," he warned. Off in the brush, Matt heard a low, rasping breathing and a frantic scratching in the leaves. The noise stopped the moment they stood still. Moving warily, the boys came upon a fox crouched low on the ground. It did not run, but lay snarling at them. And as he came nearer, Matt saw that its foreleg was caught fast. With a long stick, Etienne pushed aside the leaves, and Matt caught the glint of metal. "White man's trap," said Etienne. "How do you know?" Matt demanded. "Indians not use iron trap. Iron trap bad." "You mean a white man set this trap?" Matt thought of Ben. "No. Some white man pay for bad Indian to hunt for him. White men not know how to hide trap so good." Etienne showed Matt how cleverly the trap had been hidden, the leaves and earth mounded up like an animal burrow with two half-eaten fish heads concealed inside. The fox watched them, its teeth bared. The angry eyes made Matt uncomfortable. "Well, we're in luck to find it first," he said, to cover his uneasiness. Etienne shook his head. "Not beaver hunting ground," he said. "Turtle clan hunt here." He pointed to a nearby tree. On the bark, Matt could just make out a crude scar that had the shape somewhat like a turtle. He was indignant. "Well, we found it," he said. "You mean you're just going to leave it here because of a mark on a tree?" "Beaver people not take animal on turtle land," Etienne repeated. "We can't just let it suffer," Matt protested. "Suppose no one comes here for days." "Then fox get away." "How can he get away?" "Bite off foot." Indeed, Matt could see now that the creature had already gnawed its own flesh down to the bone. "Leg mend soon," Etienne added, noting Matt's troubled face. "Fox have 3 legs beside." "I don't like it," Matt insisted. He wondered why he minded so much. He had long ago got used to clubbing the small animals caught in his own snares, but there was something about this fox that was different. Those defiant eyes showed no trace of fear. He was struck by the bravery that could inflict such pain on itself to gain freedom. Reluctantly, he followed Etienne back to the trail, leaving the miserable animal behind. "It's a cruel way to trap an animal," he muttered. "It's worse than our snares." My grandfather would not allow beaver people to buy iron trap. Some Indian hunt like white men now. One time, many moose and beaver. Plenty for all Indians, and for white men too. But white men not hunt it, to eat, only for skin. Him pay Indian to get skin. So Indian use white man's trap. Matt could not find an answer. Tramping beside Etienne, he was confused and angry as well. He couldn't understand the Indian code that led an animal to suffer just because of a mark on a tree. And he was fed up with Etienne's scorn for white men. It was ridiculous to think that he and Etienne could ever really be friends. Sometimes he wished he could never see Etienne again. Even at that moment, he realized that this was really not true. Even though Etienne annoyed him, Matt was constantly goaded to keep trying to win this strange boy's respect. He would lie awake at night, staring up at the chinks of starlight in the cabin roof, and make up stories in which he himself, not Etienne, was the hero. Sometimes he imagined how Etienne would be in some terrible danger, and he, Matt, would be brave and calm and come swiftly to the rescue. He would kill a bear unaided, or a panther, or fend off a rattlesnake about to strike. Or he would learn about an enemy band of Indians sneaking through the forest to attack the place where Etienne was sleeping, and he would run through the woods and give the alarm in time. In the morning, he laughed at himself for this childish daydreaming. There was little chance he would ever be a hero, and little chance, too, that Etienne would ever need his help. Matt knew that the Indian boy came day after day only because his grandfather sent him. For some reason, the old man had taken pity on this helpless white boy, and at the same time, he had shrewdly grasped at the chance for his grandson to learn to read. If he suspected that Etienne had become the teacher instead, he would doubtless put a stop to the visits altogether. Matt knew he ought to feel grateful for Etienne's teaching. Every day Etienne taught him some new thing, a plant like an onion that he could drop into his cooking pot to make his stew more tasty, a weed with a small orange flower and a milky juice in its stem that took away the sting of insect bites or poison ivy, a plant with brownish flowers and roots bearing a string of nut-like bulbs that thickened his stew and made it more nourishing. He had pointed out plants that Matt must never eat, no matter how hungry he might be. He had even showed Matt how to improvise a rain cape in a sudden rain by quickly punching a hole through the center of a wide strip of birch bark and making a cone of bark for his head. The only thing that Matt could teach him, Etienne was set against learning. For Etienne, the white man's signs on paper was piswat, good for nothing. Nevertheless, Matt noticed that in spite of himself, Etienne had learned something from the white boy. He was speaking the English tongue with greater ease. Perhaps he was not aware how differently he spoke. He picked up new words readily. Sometimes he used them with that odd humor that Matt was beginning to recognize. Matt knew that Etienne was mocking when some of his favorite expressions came solemnly out of the Indian's mouth. "Reckon so," Etienne would say. "Rain comes soon, by golly." Sometimes he even took a fancy to a word out of Robinson Crusoe. He especially liked the sound of verily. In return, Matt liked to try out Indian words. They were not hard to understand, but impossible to get his tongue around. He didn't think he could ever quite get them right, but he could see that though it amused Etienne when he tried, it also pleased him. "Cha qua," this morning, Matt might say, "I chased a kawa out of the corn patch." He wouldn't add that he had wasted an arrow and watched the porcupine waddle off unharmed. Perhaps, after all, those lessons hadn't been entirely wasted. Chapter 14. Robinson Crusoe had come to an end. Matt had skipped more than half of it, choosing only the pages where there was plenty of action. Now he was sorry it had not lasted longer. Etienne also seemed disappointed. "Too bad," he commented, copying one of Matt's frequent remarks. "I tell story to brothers. Every night I tell more story. They like." Delighted, Matt tried to picture the Indians sitting around the campfire at night listening to Etienne tell the story of Robinson Crusoe. He would give a great deal to hear Etienne's version of it. And now suddenly he had an inspiration. "Well, if you want more stories, I have lots of them," he exclaimed. He took his father's Bible from the shelf. Why hadn't he thought of this before? Why, there was Samson, David and Goliath, Joseph in his coat of many colors. "They're even better than Robinson Crusoe," he promised. It really was true. The ancient Bible stories were filled with adventure, and they were told straight in a simple language that didn't need skipping. He began with the story of Noah, how God warned Noah that a great flood was coming, and how Noah built the ark and took inside his family, and 2 of every kind of animal, and how they lived on the ark safely while it rained for 40 days and 40 nights, and how Noah sent a dove out 3 times, and when it came back the 3rd time with a twig of olive in his beak, Noah knew that the flood was over. Here, Matt looked up to see a grin on Etienne's face. "Beaver people tell story like that," he said. "Very old story. You want me tell?" Matt waited curiously. "Very long time," Etienne began, scowling as he tried to translate it from his own tongue. "Before animal was great rain. Water come over all the land. One Indian go to very high hill, climb very high tree. Rain many days. Water come up to the feet of Indian, but no more. Gludskope bring 3 ducks to Indian. One day he let 1 duck go. It fly away and not come back. Other day he let other duck go. It not come back. Then last duck come back with mud in mouth. Indian know water go down. When water all gone, he come down from tree. He make grass, make bird and animal. Make man and beaver make all other Indians." "Golly," said Matt, "it's almost like the Bible story. Where did the Indians get it?" Etienne shrugged. "Very old story. Indians take long time to tell. I not know white man's words." You did it fine, but who's this glove, whatever you call him? Gluskaby, mighty hunter, come from north, very strong. He make wind blow, make thunder. He make all animal. He make Indian. Matt was puzzled. He had heard that the Indians worshipped the Great Spirit. This Gluskaby did not sound like a great spirit. It sounded more like one of the heroes in the old folks' tales his mother had told him when he was a child. He decided it would be impolite to ask more. He wondered if the Indians had many more stories like that, and how it could it be that here in the forest they had learned about the flood. Okay, moving on to chapter 15. On the day of their greatest adventure, Etienne had come without his dog, so there was no warning. Oh, that's an example of the text predicting that something's going to happen. Matt was in fine spirits that day because he had managed by a magnificent stroke of luck to hit a rabbit with his bow and arrow. It was the first time this had happened, and it was more the rabbit's doing than his own. This silly creature had just sat there and let him take careful aim. All the same, he was pleased with himself and even more pleased that Etienne had been there to see it. When the boys decided to visit the beaver dam again, Matt was unwilling to leave the rabbit behind in case some thieving animal should discover it. He was walking behind Etienne, swinging the rabbit carelessly by the ears as Etienne always did, when the Indian suddenly halted, his whole body tensed. Matt could see nothing unusual, and he had opened his mouth to speak, but Etienne silenced him with a jerk of his hand. And then he heard a sound in the underbrush ahead, not a rustle like a grouse or a snake, not a trapped animal. This was a stirring of something moving slowly and heavily. He felt a cold prickle in his stomach. He stood beside Etienne, his own muscles tight, scarcely breathing. A low bush bent sideways. Through the trees, a brown head thrust itself, bigger than that of a dog and shaggier. It was a bear cub. It was a small bear cub. Matt could see the little eyes peering at him curiously, the brown nose wriggling at the strange smell of human boy. The little animal looked so comical that Matt almost laughed out loud. "Tss!" Etienne warned under his breath. There was a crashing of bush and a low, snarling growl. An immense paw reached through the thicket and tumbled the cub over and out of sight. In its place loomed a huge brown shape. Burst into the leaves was a head 3 times as big as the cub's. No curiosity in those small eyes, only an angry reddish gleam. Somehow, Matt had the sense not to run. He stood frozen on the path. A bear could overtake a running man in a few bounds, and this one was only 2 bounds away. The bear's head moved slowly side to side. Its heavy body brushed against the branches as though they were cobwebs. It swayed, shifting its weight from one foot to the other, and slowly it rose on its hind legs. Matt could see the wicked curving claws. Matt would never know why he acted as he did. He could not remember thinking at all, only staring with numb horror at the creature about to charge. Somehow, he did move. He swung the dead rabbit by its ears and hurled it straight at the bear's head. The tiny body struck the bear squarely on its nose, and with a jerk of its head, the bear shook it off as though it was a buzzing mosquito. The rabbit flopped useless to the ground. The bear did not even bother to look down at it. She had been distracted for only an instant, but in that instant, something flashed through the air. There was a sharp thwang and the dull thud of a blow. Just between the eyes of the bear, the shaft of Etienne's arrow quivered. As the waving forepaws began to lower, a second arrow struck just behind the bear's shoulder. The great head shuddered and sank toward the ground. With a wild yell, Etienne sprang forward and thrust his knife deep just behind his first arrow. Still scarcely aware that he moved at all, Matt leaped after him, jerking his own knife from his belt, and he sank it into the brown fur. His blow had been misplaced, but it was not needed. The bear's sides were heaving. The boys stood watching, and in a few moments it lay still. Matt stared down at the creature in horror. The fearsome yellow teeth were still bared in a snarl. Saliva and blood dribbled down from his open jaws. The little eyes that had glittered so savagely were filmed over. The long, sharp claws hung powerless, clotted with pawed up earth. Now that there was nothing to fear, Matt felt his knees shaking. He hoped that Atian would not notice, but he managed a wide grin to hide his trembling. But Atian did not grin back. He stood over the bear and he began to speak, slowly and solemnly in his own tongue. He spoke for a long time. "What are you saying?" "What were you saying?" Matt demanded when the speaking was over. "I tell bear I do not want to kill," Atian answered. "Indian not kill she-bear with cub. I tell bear we did not come here to hunt." "But it might have killed us both." "Maybe. I asked bear to forgive that I must kill." "Well, I'm mighty thankful that you did," Matt said stoutly. He was about to say that he had never been so scared in his life, but he thought better of it. Atian looked at him and his solemnness suddenly dissolved into a grin. "You move quick," he said, "like Indian." Matt felt his cheeks turn red. "You killed him," he said honestly, yet he knew he had had a part. He had given Atian just that instant in which to notch his arrow. Atian nudged the bear with his toe. "Small," he said. "Just some fat, good for eat." Small? That monstrous creature? It certainly was too big for the two boys to carry. It appeared that Atian had no intention of trying. "Be long squaw now," he said. "My go tell." "You mean a squaw is going to carry that heavy thing?" "Cut up meat, then carry. Squaw work," Atian answered. It was plain that he had done the man's work and was finished with it. The cub, Matt remembered now, was nowhere in sight. Atian shook his head. "Let cub go," he said. "When Sigwan come again, him plenty big to eat." "Take rabbit," Atian reminded him. Matt looked with distaste at the rabbit, almost covered by the bear's heavy paw, the fur matted and bloody. He would rather not have touched it, but obediently he pulled it out. It was his dinner after all, and he knew that in Atian's world everything that was killed must be used. The Indians did not kill for sport. When Atian had disappeared into the forest, Matt still stood looking down at the first bear he had ever seen. He felt resentful. Atian had killed the bear, of course. It was his by right, but Matt would have liked just a small share of that meat, or even one of those big claws to show his father. And then he remembered the Indian boy's tribute. He had moved fast like an Indian. That would be his share enough. Okay, we'll stop for there and come for chapter 16 later.